right, good afternoon, everybody. How we doing? Everybody good? Full bellies, distension, sleep. It's all good. I know that feeling. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I think we're going to have some folks filtering in for the next few minutes. It sounds like the community hub was still going hot and heavy out there, so we may have some folks come in. But good afternoon. My name is Fritz Haimberger. I've been here with Appian for just shy of 7 years. It's hard to believe. That's in dog years is what I feel like. 49 years is what it really feels like. But it's wonderful to have you all here. I look after our healthcare division, so payers and providers around the world. And today we are going to have a little chat. This is definitely going to be more of a TED-style talk, if you will. I think we've only got 20 or 25 minutes, so I want to keep some time for Q&A. And those of you who know me know that A, I don't stand still very well, and B, I love to be interrupted throughout. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free. Feel free to absolutely raise your hand and ask. If you do have a question, know that supposedly you all can hear the question, but I cannot hear the question, so we may need to relay. All good, but we'll make sure that we get it not only for the recording, but also for all of us here live and in person. So with that said, again, Fritz Haimberger, industry leader for our healthcare world. Been in this space about 22, 23 years now. I have a clinical background myself, biomedical engineering background, and I'm really excited to chat with you all about MD Anderson. MD Anderson has been a client for a good portion of my tenure here at Appian, actually. MD Anderson themselves is a... does anybody here know MD Anderson? Just show of hands. Anybody had any experience with MD Anderson, family, themselves? You don't have to go into detail by any stretch. So definitely some folks who know it well. MD Anderson is near and dear to our hearts. There are precious few of us that have not had oncology touch us personally, or certainly those in our family at some point. And knowing the immense level of gold standard quality that they provide to their patients, both in Houston, Texas, for those folks who are able to join them directly, they're in person, as well as who they're allowed to be affiliates around the world with them, delivering that care outside of the Houston, Texas world. It really just is a phenomenal organization. Quick shout out to a gentleman who was going to be joining me today, Bill Simeone. He's Chief Quality Officer and also looks after the operations for the organization on the Physicians Network side of the house. Bill actually had a family emergency. He's not going to be able to join us, but I promised him that I would try to do this right even without him. So certainly keeping him in our thoughts. MD Anderson Physicians Network is one of the 3 legs of the tripod of MD Anderson itself. MD Anderson has MD Anderson Cancer Center. That's what most of us think of when we think of MD proper. Then MD Anderson Physicians Network and MD Anderson Cancer Network are the 2 other legs of the tripod. So I mentioned when you go to Houston, you are going to MD Anderson Cancer Center. Not everybody can make it to Houston, Texas for their care. So when you think about folks who may be in Boise, Idaho, or Secaucus, New Jersey, or right here in Fort Lauderdale that may just not be able to hop a plane every other week to get there for treatment, they may happen to have an oncologist where they are locally, and that oncologist may realize the unbelievable quality of care that MD is able to provide, and they want to affiliate with MD Anderson. Well, of course, you can imagine that MD Anderson, that is quite a gilded name, right? They're very well known worldwide for the unbelievable quality of care and patient satisfaction, patient experience, clinician experience that they are able to provide. And they reach out and say, hey, we would love to become an affiliate. And whether you're at the physician level or perhaps a physician group level, or even at a hospital level, they have what they call the Cancer Network. And the MD Anderson Cancer Network, very similarly to Physicians Network, helps that affiliation process, brings those external folks into the MD Anderson fold, and helps to provide those best-in-class protocols, those best-in-class clinical trials, everything that they have available at their fingertips in Houston, out to the masses, to those various organizations. MD Anderson came to Appian a number of years ago and basically was very much on board with the notion of a platform play. How do we really take all of these disparate systems across our clinician management, across patient management, across protocol management, and how do we attempt to stitch it together to get that true orchestration layer, that true system that is going to give us a single pane of glass from which to manage these different entities within the organization? And one of the first things that they actually came up with for Physicians Network is, all right, when we look to bring on these affiliates into our fold, we want to make sure those I's are dotted and those T's are crossed. Understandably so, right? You just don't want anybody to be able to put that logo on their entity without being properly vetted. So that said, one of the key ways that MD Anderson actually uses us is in their physician quality assessment realm. So when you think about physician quality, does anybody here do any work with physician quality at all, or any quality for that matter, anywhere? No? So typically when we look at the quality angle, you're effectively doing a grand rounds type situation if you are, right? You're taking those snapshots in time. You're looking at various and sundry patient encounters. You're trying to get a broad swath of different clinical situations, trying to get a complete view of the type of care that that particular entity provides out to their patients, their fellow clinical constituents, et cetera. And with MD Anderson, this physician quality assessment was typically a months-long process, being able to concatenate data from different systems, certainly from paper as well, when we think about some situations that may not be able to provide a digital copy or easily pass that clinical information across. You may get nothing more than a PDF that needs to be ingested, needs to be dealt with, needs to be read through. And when all was said and done, without going into extreme detail, MD Anderson was actually able to shave off, you can see a 12 business day lag there. So almost 3 full weeks have been shaved off that PQA process just by getting it onto Appian, giving not only those folks at MD Anderson the ability to view that data in that single pane of glass, but also even showing out an Appian instance to those potential affiliates to give them a portal through which to manage their submissions rather than having to print out, sign, scan, upload, email, et cetera. We all know what a pain that is, right? So being able to ultimately shave almost 3 business weeks off that process, when it comes to the world of oncology, obviously minutes, hours, days can mean the difference between life or death. So being able to shave 3 weeks off a process that is going to get that world-class care to those individuals that need it all the quicker has been absolutely huge. You know, when we think about what MD Anderson has done in the past, they have had quite the amalgamation of technology. They have had, oh goodness, I can think of 2, 3 different clinical systems that I've worked with with MD Anderson just in my previous lives in the consulting world. But when we think about, you know, what else is involved, we talked about quality, we talked about clinician licensure management, we talked about contracts management, the facets that are brought together for MD Anderson as they look at bringing these constituents on are multifold for sure. And when we think about the notion of low code, Don Bossie's here in the audience. Don is actually our account executive on the MD Anderson account. And Don did a lot of work with them, you know, that notion of what truly is low code. Why would you need low code? How's it going to work in healthcare? Those of us who have been in healthcare in a long time certainly are very used to the electronic medical record implementation that says, hey, we can get this done in 14 months for $300 million. And ... 24 months and $800 million later, it's still not completely implemented, installed, and everybody is happy as can be. Anybody here had experience with that? I'm seeing some head nods. Yes, absolutely. So that said, the notion of low code is a bit of a foreign concept to healthcare. So to truly be able to bring the notion of low code into healthcare, to show them what's capable, they had some very low code light pieces of software in place that they were just starting to test. They had done a few applications, but the notion of truly having an enterprise grade system to bring together those multitudinous systems into one was, like I said, quite that foreign concept. Being able to get the buy-in, being able to think about how are we going to do this with the staff that we have. You know, it has really been a quintessential partnership. There's no question about that. You know, and I can't harp on that enough. When we think about healthcare, those of us who have been in healthcare for a while, have been patient-facing for a while, certainly know that missions exist. You know, whether it's on the patient care side of the house, whether you're on the pharma life sciences side of the house, patient care is at the core of what we do. And everything we do, irrespective of where in the continuum it is ultimately going to come back to that. So to be able to understand a mission of a client and kind of wrap ourselves around that mission, if you will, both from our side, from a partner perspective, from an Appian customer success, professional services perspective. It really was quite the endeavor that Don was able to lead the charge, if you will. And I think what really gave them the satisfaction and the understanding of knowing that we truly embodied that same mission with them. Of course, MD Anderson's mission, everyone sees it everywhere, right? Making cancer history. That's all they do. That's the only thing they care about. And if it doesn't come back to that, off to the side it goes. And being able to work with a company like Appian that can sit down and truly appreciate what that mission is, why we're doing what we're doing, what the end game is here, is what it's all about. So when we, we're able to show that support, give them kind of the shoulder in the small of the back, if you will, to know them, to let them know that they were going to be able to get this done in this fixed amount of time, get that first application out, get that minimally viable product out the door, and then iterate on top of that. Thinking about that agile methodology, agile was already in place at MD Anderson, but Appian certainly helped to push that ball even further down the field. So those were certainly some of the challenges that were definitely overcome and are still very much in process today, multiple years later as we look towards additional applications. We've got some work coming down the pike on the concordance review front, on the clinical due diligence front. We're having conversations with them actually about integrating with Epic, their electronic medical record, as well as some automation technology as well, to be able to help with clinical trials, study startup, activation reduction, being able to really pull together even more constituents from within the organization into the Appian fold and help accelerate their time to value within the walls of the hospital itself. And to that point, how do you gain buy-in? I think one of the best ways to gain buy-in was to truly have people see what Appian could do for them. Being able to do those proofs of concepts, be able to do those 5x5 type situations, be able to, it's one thing to be able to talk the talk, but to quickly walk the walk and show them what's possible has been huge. When we think about that vendor selection process, I think one of the biggest boons for Appian certainly was the notion of not having a Frankenstack situation, right? And especially those of us that have been in the clinical world, the healthcare world long enough, when we think about those electronic medical record vendors out there where you have to purchase different modules just to get one thing done. We think about even some of the large ERPs that are out there, some of those other large technical systems on the market. There may be 120 modules from which to choose, and at any given time, you're going to need 13 just to get one process done. The great thing about Appian that I think was incredibly appealing for them was that you buy Appian, you get Appian, right? It's that single SKU. Those of you who know Appian very well, whether it's process mining, whether it's RPA, whether it's the BPM front, whether workflow, it's Appian. You purchase Appian, you get Appian, and I think that notion of not having to nickel and dime and have it be a piecemeal situation based on their experience was incredibly exciting to them to be able to see that. So as far as implementations, I hesitate to talk about a timeline simply because we are constantly rolling new applications at MD Anderson. I mentioned that we talked about the concordance review, we talked about clinical due diligence. Don, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Do you happen to know exactly how long it was to get that first iteration of their first project out? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was approximately 4.5 to 5 months.
4.5, 5 months. So again, back to that notion of we've all been so used to the electronic medical records that have taken a year, year and a half, 2 years to get finally rolled out. The thought of getting it done in a third of a year was pretty incredible.
The initial part of the application, though, they actually went live with it within, I think it was within 2 sprints. So that was, just all the demographic intake information. So we're setting up that part of the application where we can use them to get, their end users comfortable with what they're going to experience with that. So it's pretty quick.
That's awesome. So for those who didn't hear Don, the first iteration of that first application was actually complete in 2 sprints. So when you think about a sprint being 2 weeks, 1 month to get that first iteration done, that MVP out the door in a month, and then to constantly build on top of it. You know, what I love about Appian, and I think was really exciting to MD Anderson and also many of our other clients in the healthcare world as well, when we think about those patients being at the center of everything we do, the ability to ensure that patient safety, clinician safety is paramount for everybody. Being able to build a system and fail fast. I know that's a bit of a, people may be gasping on that, but the notion of failing fast and being able to fix it immediately before it goes GA, before it gets out there to the general public, has really been huge in the healthcare world. MD Anderson is no exception by any stretch. Being able to have those ideas and have the ability to say, hey, yeah, let's try it, is really a novel concept that before here, they really didn't have an opportunity to see. So we've got, across the continuum at MD Anderson, as far as what a team looks like, everything from developers within IT, we've got a head of IT involved. We've certainly got Bill Simeone. Bill's the Chief Quality Officer and VP of Operations. We've got folks over on the MD Anderson proper side of the house, the Chief Academic Officer, her entire office, as well as folks under her are involved within the process. So it really goes to show that working with Appian clients on the business side of the house, getting that buy-in, figuring out what those problems that are really at the root of what they're seeing day in and day out are, and then very quickly and simultaneously working with that IT side of the house such that they know that no one is working in a silo. As much as we talk about Appian, having the ability to be citizen developers, existing in the ecosystem, and we don't necessarily need to have as much IT lift. We're not going to go to that CIO's office and ask for 23 developers for the next 18 months. Being able to still bring that technical side of the house into the fray quickly and make sure that they are well taken care of was really huge. And that said, I am convinced personally that much of our success there was due to Don's credit of being able to pull all those constituents in as quickly as you did, to be able to visualize success and get that buy-in on what the mission is, generally speaking. As far as the business benefits and major results, again, it goes back to MD Anderson. We think about making cancer history. That's their logo, that's their mission, that is the extent to which, for which they stand. And again, going back to being able to shave 3 weeks off a quality assessment program, being able to get a clinical trial stood up weeks faster than we otherwise would be able to, being able to take on additional clinical trials into the system such that those are obviously going to generate more income for the institution, which can then be reinvested into that mission of making cancer history even more quickly, is a very interesting flywheel that we see go on within the institution. MD Anderson, of course, is part of the University of Texas system. It is technically the University of Texas MD Anderson, so by no means are they a for-profit entity. Being able to take that additional revenue and roll it right back into the institution to provide those patients with a top-notch experience, to provide those clinicians with a phenomenal working environment from a research perspective, from a day-to-day perspective, has really, really been cool. And as far as top lessons and key takeaways, I would say that this is very much going back to that notion of nothing can be done in a silo. Don bringing all those folks together at the inception point and ensuring that throughout the extent of the project, those connections are constantly made. It's one thing to get people excited and rah-rah at the beginning of a project, but very quickly that excitement can fall off, no matter your mission. There's no question. The day-to-day certainly falls in. We all get sidetracked. We all very much see other things going on the daily. And being able to truly keep that excitement, keep that vision, keep that mission forefront throughout the 4 years now that they have been a client, as they seek out additional projects, as they look for those mission-critical systems and those mission-critical type projects that are going to help them with their sole goal, has probably been one of the biggest takeaways. To get that buy-in early and to ensure that it stays there often was probably the biggest key takeaway. Other than that, future plans, I know we had talked about, this was definitely going to be Bill's part of the conversation. I'm not about to make a forward-looking statement on behalf of MD Anderson, but full well knowing that, as I said, we have concordance review coming down the pike. We have some clinical due diligence work. We have some work on the trials side of the house potentially coming as well, integrating with their revenue cycle. There are many things coming down that we're pretty excited about here, not only in 22, but also on tap for 2023 as well, that we're looking a little further down the road for. That said, I know we've got a couple of minutes left. I am willing to take questions if anybody has any. If not, that's okay too. I know it's after lunch, right after lunch. Full bellies, I can appreciate that. Thoughts, concerns, questions? Yes, sir. Oh, we got a mic for you right there.
How did you integrate with the EMR? Was it Epic or Cerner?
So MD Anderson does have Epic. Yep. So from an EMR integration perspective, we'll take whether it's Epic, whether it's Cerner, whether it's Meditech, Allscripts, pick your EMR of choice. Appian is obviously very modernly connectable. So when we think about OpenEpic, for example, we can direct connect with Epic through OpenEpic if it's an API, REST or SOAP-based API. Obviously, if it's a web services situation, we can play that game. If it is a less modern system, most of the EMRs obviously are gunning towards that, FHIR, Fast Health Interoperability Resources, the latest and greatest HL7 standard that is more API-based. But if we needed to revert to, say, an HL7 version 2.x or a version 3.x, absolutely we can, we have. Even if we, living in Nashville myself, we certainly, healthcare USA seemingly, we've got 700, I think we're up to 770 healthcare companies in Nashville. There are many of them that, for example, are still running AS400s for their patient accounting systems. If we needed to hit an AS400, for example, being able to use Appian RPA, or if there's already RPA existing within the client, Blue Prism, Automation Anywhere, UiPath, pick your poison, we can absolutely use those to do any type of screen scraping of those systems that are not modernly connectable. One more.
From an implementation perspective, did you have to pay attention to validation testing, because this is a regulated industry, so following kind of a strict methodology and getting the systems validated before you could turn it on?
Yes, absolutely we did. So if you think that industry regulations are strict and tight, let me introduce you to MD Anderson. They are, if there were ever a place that had their ducks in a row, proverbially, that would definitely be MD Anderson. So yes, absolutely. Your regression testing, your user acceptance testing, your everything was thoroughly vetted throughout each of those sprints, to Don's point earlier. Being able to get what you hope to get implemented and then figure out if you are going to fail. And if you are going to fail, fail fast, such that you can then rejigger, whatever system that you happen to build, such that it will pass those tests. But absolutely, extensive testing, both within IT as well as in administration, as well as getting general user testing. Folks that had never seen it, touched it before, involved, 100%.
Onto this, because I think this is part of your question too, from just getting the integrations in place. One of the things that we leveraged for this particular project was the Appian guarantee, and we had an advanced phase ahead of that, which was essentially 4 weeks of making sure that we've got access to the systems that we would need access to, so that when we hit the ground on day one, there would be no delay in establishing those connections, right? Making sure VPN access was there, that everything was, all the I's were dotted, T's were crossed with InfoSec as well, after the purchase was made, right? With the intention of being able to go full throttle from day one and kicking the project off.
So, very important, absolutely. Thanks, Don. Well, I know we are at our time. I just want to say thank you all for being here. It's been a pleasure. If anybody has any questions after the session, feel free, ask. My email, fritz.haimberger@appian.com. Don't hesitate to reach out after the conference. But appreciate you all being here. Have a great rest of the week.